Good evening, this is Ali Tarnishi at the new show Connect with Ali, where we have a meaningful, open, and honest conversation about diversity, inclusion, community, and equity. Let's dive together about this topic. And today I have a local guest and a guest from across the world to have this discussion and see what diversity mean from Canadian perspective and immigrant perspective. Please help me today welcome my amazing guest, Enda from Indonesia, and Katie Duaron from Moncton, New Brunswick. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you for being here. And can you just, Enda, tell us a little bit about yourself and just a little introduction about who is Enda?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm from Indonesia originally. I was born there. I grew up some parts of my life there, and then a lot of it was actually outside of Indonesia, across different countries, mostly in the Middle East and Central Asia and Southeast Asia. And then I moved here to Canada as an international student. I came to New Brunswick almost 12 years ago now, and then moved to Moncton for a job.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
12?
No, yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. Yeah.
Excellent. So journey is I see your journey is full of diversity, it's full of inclusion, like from Indonesia to Middle East to Canada, and they are all involved about diversity and inclusion. And my friend Katie Duaron, tell us a little bit about who is Katie Duaron.
Sure, yeah, I don't have quite the resume like Inda, but my name's Katie. I'm a full-time artist in Moncton, here in New Brunswick, and that's about it. I mean, I've been doing art for about 6 years, say, and yeah, I'm a full-time artist. I say that just because there's many artists, but not everyone does it full-time, but I love my job, and that's me.
Amazing, that's me. And it's all about art can be full of diversity as well, because we mix color. We mix like a canvas, we put so many different color, and you put diverse color to make a beautiful canvas. And that's diversity by itself right there. So now before we dive really in our topic, I would like to ask you a little bit about, like, as you can see, I have like a diverse guest, Canadian and immigrant, and then myself, immigrant. So even though I have like 2 Canadian and 2 immigrants, like we have here our friend Charles, the cameraman, and I have Katie and me and Inda as immigrants. So what is your definition of diversity?
For me, diversity is just the presence of different people, people coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds, sexual orientations, gender expressions, and also different abilities. I think when diversity is present and when it's actually, when we actually benefit from it, then when there's true inclusion and true belonging, then truly a community, I think, can thrive.
A community in thrive.
Can thrive.
Can thrive.
Yeah.
I love that. Community can thrive. What about you, my friend? What does diversity mean to Katie?
I echo that. No. To be honest, like I've been born and raised here in Moncton, and just recently, like I find, I don't know, the last 5 years, I feel like there's lots more diversity in Moncton, whereas when I grew up, I feel like I wasn't as educated in diversity, and to be honest, I feel like I'm ignorant in a lot of ways with diversity, and I want to educate myself to know more about it. But to make a long story short, I just think diversity is different cultures and, yeah, like she said, different sexual orientations or whatever. And I think diversity means something different to other people as well, depending on your background. So, yeah, it's definitely a complex question, but I'm sure the dictionary can tell you. Yeah.
I love that. And mostly diversity is mostly about uniqueness, like as unique. And we have to honor that, because when each one is unique in their own way. So my question was the second part of the question: how can we encourage people to honor the uniqueness of each individual?
I think it's acknowledging that each of us is unique, that we bring something different to the table, and that we have different lived experiences based on our different identities and the intersections of our identities. For example, I'm a woman, I'm an Asian, I'm a visible minority. I grew up differently than many people. I speak English as almost as fluently as I speak my mother tongue, so that's a different immigrant experience than someone else may have. I'm also a Muslim, so those are all the intersections of my identities. And I can meet someone else who has a lot of those same things, but they have a very different lived experience. So I think it's just acknowledging that and kind of centering those differences, and when we tell stories, kind of have those different stories up there and out there.
Okay, so when I hear you saying acknowledging those differences, what do you mean by that? Acknowledging, like identity, I know each one have their own identity, Muslim, from national, like a national or original or different background or ethnicity. How can we acknowledge that and still make that their unique, their individual? Like acknowledge, like is that will be enough, or just like accept them as they are and so they can thrive? Because you mentioned thrive at the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. Like acknowledge, I think, is to also respect.
Okay, respect. Okay.
Respect that people have these identities and lived experiences. And let's say somebody tells you like, "Oh, I'm experiencing this because of this," like listen to them.
Listening.
Don't dismiss them because maybe from your perspective you didn't experience that.
Okay.
So
I love
things
that.
like that, for example.
Okay,
Yeah.
so respect, listening, and acknowledge. That's really good feature to recognize someone's, because sometimes, many times, like we are in a conversation and we feel like somebody not listening to us. We don't feel acknowledged. We don't feel that we can take it the wrong way. Maybe I'm from this different country. Maybe because I'm Muslim, because I'm from a different country, I'm not getting the same treatment. So I feel like there is something that they are not recognizing my identity. They are not respecting. They are not listening to me. So that can really break that diversity.
Yeah.
Love it.
Truly.
I love it. And the same question to you, my friend. How can we encourage people to honor the uniqueness of each individual?
I think there's different ways. I definitely agree with Inda. I also think like just educating yourself on who's, like for me, for instance, I work alone, but if I worked in an office space with people from different cultures or backgrounds or whatever, I would like to educate myself on, okay, well, what does it mean to be Muslim? What does this mean? How is this going to change? Do they need, just asking questions, like accommodating them because they might need something that you're not fully educated on. So I think being aware, asking questions obviously in the right way and in a respectful way, just to make sure that they feel like included and that, you know, they matter. I think a lot of people are just ignorant and they don't realize, okay, well, they're doing this at this time or they're doing this for this reason. So I think, yeah, just being educated and asking questions is key.
I love that. It's about education. A lot of people sometimes like misunderstand, and they just like, they feel like there is nobody, as in mentioned, nobody listen to them. And sometimes we don't really explain ourselves. And we expect people to understand us, but if we don't explain ourselves, we educate people about us, we are not moving forward, because we have to be on the same page. And to be on the same page, we have to understand each other, right?
Sure. And I think that self-education piece is very important too, because often, for example, for people in minorities, it does get, like, for me, I personally usually have the energy to, you know, talk to people, to have dialogues with people, but it does get emotionally and intellectually taxing. So I love when Katie said, like, you also have to take it upon yourselves to learn about the world, be curious about the world around you, and that's how things can change too, I think.
Self-education too.
Self-education for everyone, continuous learning. Yeah.
I love that. I love that, Inda, because I will speak for myself. When I moved to Canada, I've been living here for 14 years. I moved 2007, and it was like my body was in Canada and my mind was in Morocco.
Right, yeah.
So I was still bringing that mentality, that my way or the highway. And how you want to expect people to understand you if you don't really make an effort and try to understand people. So it's about understanding. And that's why it's so important to have this conversation, because conversation really lead to dialogue. And when we have a nice dialogue, we get to understand where Inda coming from, where Katie is coming from. And when we understand, guess what? That will lead to the change.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, why this happening? We will start, what shall we do to make that change?
Yeah.
And that's really important, because it's education. And listening too, like power of listening. Listening, we need to listen to each other. and to listen to each other. We get to understand each other. This will bring us to the next question, which is connected to what you really shared. What are some of the steps that need to be taken to reduce the bias and champion diversity understanding in work or in the community? So step that we need to be taken to reduce the bias and champion diversity understanding in our community and at work. Anyone can jump to this and to answer this.
I don't know if I'm going to answer this the right way, but basically I think just being open. Like, I think a lot of times, especially if you're born and raised in Canada and you haven't exposed yourself to much diversity, sometimes people have a mentality of, it's been this way forever and this is the way I like it, and I don't understand this, and I don't want to, and they don't even want to learn. I think a big step is just being open and saying, okay, like, I'm going to learn, is this true? Is this stereotype true? Is this bias true? And often, it's nice to hear from other people's perspective besides just having like a ignorant mindset. I don't know. Like, I think that's part of staying away from stereotypes and bias. Yeah. If that answers that part.
I love that. It's the stereotypes.
Just like having an open mind, I think, is like a huge part. Just because, you can do all the right steps, but if you're not even willing to learn, or I think mindset is a huge thing.
So mindset play a big thing in that. If you are ignorant and you are not really willing to be open to other people's perspective, you're stuck in your mind.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And my friend Inda, to add, to break the bias and champion diversity, just like what I know you've been involved a lot with the community Inda, and as a journalist you used to it, probably you notice a lot like something like that. So how we can reduce that in
And I also, through an organization that I co-founded with some friends, we work with youth on cultural diversity and inclusion. And that also means, respecting the cultures that have been here for a long time before any one of us came here. So when we talk about self-education and education in formal education, so I guess like there's a few things that I wanted to highlight. Formal education and continuous learning for ourselves on various communities, on diverse communities. So for example, right now we have a Black History Month, but not all schools celebrate that. We know that. And why should it be in the ideal world, we don't need a Black History Month because Black history would just be integrated into our history. Today at work, I actually did a presentation about Asian history and anti-Asian hate currently going on. And it was 200 plus years of history of Asians in Canada. And yet a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, still gets asked, like, where are you from, even though she was born here. She still gets asked things like that. And it's almost like making that person feel foreign when the Asian history is part of the Canadian history, Asian Canadians' history. It's part of history here. And sometimes it's almost like you forget about those other parts of history because it's not in the mainstream. You have to go digging. All the resources are out there. It's super easy. Find Asian history on Google and you'll find it. Asian history in Canada. So that, and then you also need investment in actual inclusive policies. And also that means in your workplace, in your community, pushing for representation in your government, because like I said, lived experiences differ for different communities and the barriers are different. So if you don't have the representation, how would your stories be told in government, in policy making? So those are some of the things that I thought.
I love that.
Would be interesting.
I love that. So usually Inda or Katie, like a lot of company, a lot of people say they are doing effort to foster diversity without equitable practice and intentional inclusion, and the end of that is always falls short, because practice and inclusion, because diversity is like inviting somebody to party, but inclusion is inviting somebody to dance. So inclusion is be part of the team, because either we want it or not, we are all diverse, because we are different, we are diverse, but inclusion It's like including. You are part of this, and that's what we want, inclusion. We want to be included, so like we share at the beginning, when we feel included, because we feel we are respected, we feel that our voice being heard, we feel that we are really matter. And that's why sometimes people say, oh, diversity, we care about diversity. Yes, we care about diversity, but what are we doing about it? It's the treatment that we are. Just like, for instance, if I invite all of you for supper, and you come to my house for supper, I have one table here, one table there, one table there. And this table is reserved for my clique, my people. That table is totally different. So those people, I talk to them, I give them time, they feel they're included. Even I serve the most beautiful food. When people leave my house, they are not going to remember the food, but they will remember the treatment. How do I treat those people? So this is really what people want. Like when they said inclusion and all that stuff, we want inclusion, we want to feel included, and we want to feel matter. So with that being said, this conversation, we really want like people to be included for their talent, for who they are, for their identity, for if they are women, if they are man, if they are black, if they are Muslim, if they are Christian, if they are Jew, they need to be included for their identity. So.
And I think people also need to feel a sense of belonging.
Thank you. Sense of belonging is a big thing.
Sense of belonging is a big thing. I think I feel such a sense of belonging here that it's almost like you take ownership of the issues that are in your community and you want to help. When you feel a sense of belonging, you want to help. This is your home. Who else is going to help and make these changes if you don't do it? And I think like all of us can take a step towards that change. Depending on your capacity, some people are just like, I don't have capacity right now. All I can do is like read a book about this issue, or I can just share this on social media. I'm like, I was at that level, like, a few months ago. I kind of still am. And so it's nothing to be ashamed about, but when you do have the capacity to kind of step up and support, maybe monetarily, maybe investing in those community groups, that would be wonderful.
I love that. And why a lot of people think like about like diversity is like a tough conversation. As soon as you mention diversity, say, oh no, like I don't want to go there. They just think about diversity being perceived as like presentation, or as a tough conversation, or just as like perspective.
I don't know. I think some people are scared to say the wrong thing is one thing, right? So sometimes being too scared can be bad too, because then you're too scared to talk to someone. Hey, where are you from? Can I learn about your culture? And you're too scared to offend anyone, so then you have no tough conversations are had. Like, I think the world right now personally is really divided. This team's right and this team's right, and I think we need more like unity and togetherness and people being willing to open up and talk. And like for me, for instance, I don't work at a traditional job with a bunch of people. I work alone, but one way I try to use inclusion is I paint a lot of diverse people. So I've painted from different cultures. I learned about them, and I've done like murals at the hospital of different cultures, stuff like that. So I think no matter what your job is, you can use inclusion, diversity in different ways. I
love that. Just use it in different way and be open. And our break is coming soon, so I really love what we already shared: listening, sense of belonging, and really recognizing and acknowledging and be identified for our identity. Because when we really feel we are recognized and we feel like we matter, we thrive. And we feel we are not respected, we shrink. And we feel like, okay, I can't really give because I don't feel included. I don't feel I'm part of this. So how you want me to be part of this and you are not really including me? And I have 39 seconds. My producer told me I have 39 seconds before break or he will kill me. So, so DICE, what does DICE mean? It's just diversity, inclusion, community, and equity. So we will be right back in 22 seconds. Thank you very much, Inda, for your amazing information you shared with us. Thank you very much, Katie. And we will dive back in the next question. How do you address diversity challenge at community after break? Thank you very much. See you after the break. Hello again, and this is Ali Tarneshi at this new show, Connect with Ali. And today we have our amazing guests, Enda and Katie, and we are having a discussion, open discussion actually, about diversity, inclusion, community, and equity. So let's dice together, my friend. So hello, this amazing guest. Let's go to the third question. How do we address diversity challenges at work or at community? Challenges of diversity, how can address that?
I feel like for me, for instance, I've always worked alone, so I haven't even encountered, work diversity challenges, stuff like that. I'm not like fully educated on that matter. However, if I was encountered with it, I would assume, talking to the person directly and saying, hey, what's the problem? Let's go from there. Do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of some things that I haven't said yet. But I think, for example, at companies or organizations, investing in actually having a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan and goals, ways to measure them, regular sessions, things like that, just like ongoing learning for the whole organization. And then also making sure that the top executives are actually involved in those as well, in those conversations. And if, underrepresented staff are involved in those things, like not making them a token. Like, sometimes people bring them into the table and be like, oh, we're diverse, we have like one black person. No. So yeah, it's just kind of making sure that if they're there, they're actually contributing, they actually feel like they can create change and collaborate with their colleagues and things like that. So, and then another thing is, like I mentioned, is representation in community, but also representation at the top levels of the company. If you cannot see yourself doing something, if you cannot see someone like you doing something, it's really hard to imagine yourself getting there. Yeah.
So involvement and contribution, and especially if it comes from a high level of the company, that represent a good way to face that.
And representation of diversity at the top level as well.
At the top level.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really a good way to address diversity challenge, because sometimes really like there is even in the community, like people as go back to when we start about listening, about respect, about recognition, about acknowledgement. People want that, and sometimes the issue arises if we don't really get people to understand that. When we get people really to get us involved, especially in a company. Okay, you are talking about diversity, but you almost like you are narrating the story on my behalf. So if I'm not included, if I'm not part of that.
Yeah, that's why I kind of said, like, talk to that person directly, like what concerns do they have, like work together basically. Common sense, it seems like common sense, but I feel like it's not. Like I think there's always many businesses or companies, they have issues and it gets pushed under the table or whatever, but if you just listen to the person and see their needs.
Okay, so mostly listen to them.
And like she said, have a plan, and I think that's all good too.
Okay. Yeah, exactly, Kathy. I really agree with you. Listening and see what's their need, because sometimes when you really listen to people's needs, we kind of acknowledge that, and the needs need to be addressed. And if it's not addressed, that will create an issue. And it's always go back to the understanding, because sometimes there is a gap and there is a break of communication, because this is maybe the way I see it from this perspective, and this is the way from somebody sees it from a different perspective. So, for instance, like where I come from Morocco.
Yeah.
And back home, if you look at people in the eye, it's
Right.
considered disrespect.
I keep looking at you in the eye.
And in Canada, when I come,
Yeah, it's like polite.
if I don't look at people in the eyes, it's disrespect. So I was like, what's going on? In back home, if I look at them with disrespect, if I don't look at them with disrespect.
So did you adapt to that, or?
Adapt to that, because
Yeah.
at the beginning, when people look at me in the eyes, I put my eyes, I feel like...
So where do you usually look?
What's that?
Where do you usually look when
I
you
just look
talk to
like
people?
this, and
Oh,
I
okay.
realize people
No, you
say, no, but I learn after that, because I have to adapt to the culture.
Right.
But before I would just look at people in the eyes, and they just like automatically I put my eyes down.
Yeah.
And people kept telling me, I start learning, and Safi said, if you don't look at me in the eye, how do I know you are honest? Maybe
Well,
you are not telling the truth, you are
right.
lying. And I was like, so people will think I'm lying. So I start to look at people in the eyes, but I'm not comfortable about it. I just someone taught me a trick. He said, just look at them over here. And
That's a good trick.
And so this is just part of like perspective.
It's just one example of
Just
like
one example,
many.
and sometimes
Yeah.
there is so many, because people really will think this is the way. When if you Edna maybe have that different culture in Indonesia, and in Morocco or here in Canada, we learn like for instance when I just came to Canada, I see like the what you call that the Halloween.
Yeah.
The Halloween, and there was like I was at the comfy college. I was a student, and they see a leg hanging down from a trunk, and there was a break time, and they said call 911. There is somebody killed, someone hiding in the trunk, and they said, "Are you serious?" I said, "No, seriously, call 911. There is
Wow.
somebody." They said, "This is just like it's Halloween," and and they didn't believe it. He says, "Come," and they showed me the leg, and this is just like.
fake.
So it is cultural thing. There's
Yeah.
It is a
cultural
weird
differences,
holiday.
and we need to learn, and it's about understanding,
Yeah.
educating, as Katie mentioned earlier, and as you mentioned, educating and listening, and that's really a big part of that.
And I just want to revisit something that Katie said earlier when you talked about like diversity. Why is diversity such a hard, tough discussion? Like Katie was saying, like people are afraid to say the wrong things. And B, I think we're afraid to challenge, to see our own biases. We're afraid to see that maybe we're wrong, maybe we've been wrong for a long time, and maybe it's time for us to change our ways. Maybe it's time for us to unlearn those things that maybe we're taught, and now it's time to learn new things. I think it's hard for everyone for that when you have to. There were so many things that I unlearned and relearned over the times, over the years in my own like personal journey, and it continues. And sometimes people will just say to you like, "What you're saying is wrong. What you're saying is like like this is actually the truth, etc., etc." Read up more on it. And people sometimes get offended when they're reminded that, hey, there's actually a lot of resources, like, you can also learn. But sometimes you need that challenge. You need that mirror up to yourself so that you can change too. And if everybody kind of takes that step, I think our world will be more inclusive and will be more open to chat with each other.
Yeah, I think, and this is awkward to say, but I think we're living in a time where people are just so, there's almost two sides. There's some people, and I've heard people say, well, I'm not a racist, or I'm not this, so they don't even want to even learn or educate themselves about anything else because they're like, oh my gosh, like this is too much, I'm not this, I'm not that. It's like, we never said you are, but you can always learn. There's nothing wrong with learning more and educating yourself. Doesn't mean that you're a bad, horrible person. Don't go to the extreme. Just say, hey, this is how it's been for this long, and maybe we did some things wrong, and yeah, I think there's the whole, people are like going overboard with, oh, well, they're canceling everything now, and and then, so I don't know, I feel like we're at this time, I don't know if anyone else sees this on social media, where people are just like getting angry easier, and I don't know.
I think we have to be brave. One of those points of like painful moments for me when I was learning was like, as an immigrant, I came here and I learned a lot of things for myself. And for me, Canada was this like place where I can just be myself. But then I started learning about the history of how Canada was built, the history with the Indigenous people, the history with the Black communities, and things like that. And you're just like, wait a minute, did I benefit from the very same systems that oppressed my Indigenous friends, ancestors, and families, and they're still going through the intergenerational trauma? That's when I'm just like, I don't know what to do. How do I fix this? And it's not necessarily like, how do I, like, it's not something to fix sometimes. It's just like, how do I take better steps for the future now that I know? And how do I look at my role now as like, I love this place, but I should love this place more if I try to make it a home for everyone.
Yeah, just because something happened bad in the past and maybe, no, it wasn't your fault or you would never done that, but it was a different time or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't say, okay, well, this was wrong back then. What can we do about it now? Like basically what she said. Like,
Yeah.
that's okay too to have that.
Yeah.
You're not, you don't have to go to the extreme and say, oh, well, I'm not this and I'm not that. Like,
I love that. I really love that viewpoint that we have to be brave. We have to learn and relearn, because that's very important. And sometimes also people, they are afraid to be judged.
Yes.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, what if I say something and hurt people's feeling? What if? But sometimes those words, unspoken word, that could be damaging more than it's building, because we're afraid to speak up, we're afraid to be ourselves, and we become to the point that we are creating some kind of stuff that we are hiding. But I think we have to be say it straightforward. Don't be afraid. I know the diversity is a tough conversation, but it's not tough when we are truthful, when we are speaking with integrity. Because when you speak with integrity, there's nothing to hide. You are speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We want really to, this is our country, either we want it or not. As an immigrant, this country treat us the same as they're treating the Canadian. And we need to change the way as immigrant, and the Canadian also, they need to change the way to look at the immigrant, because when we are on the same page, we can move to the next step. And we learn and share the understanding, so that way we can discuss at the same level. But a lot of people, as Katie mentioned earlier, a lot of people, that's the way they find themselves doing it for a long time, and they think it's right.
they don't want to talk about it.
And yeah, exactly. So
everything's fine.
my dad did
Doesn't
it, my
affect
grandfather
me.
did it, so that
Right.
make it right. But sometimes
Just gotta open.
we bring our background, we bring our baggage with us, and they think it's right. But sometimes if you
And-
look at it from this
yeah.
perspective, you see it totally wrong.
And me and Inda were talking earlier, and I was saying, just one thing that, you know, if someone said, listen, I'm hurt because of whatever reason, and then, well, I said, I'm over here and I'm, you know, I've lived in Moncton my whole life, I don't have any, I'm not really diverse or whatever, and I say, oh, well, I haven't, what are you talking about? Like, that's not true. Well, I'm not, everyone has a different background, right? So you can't speak for somebody else's experience, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just be yourself. Just be yourself and accept people as they are. Like sometimes, I remember my grandmother always used to say this one: always choose love over hate, and light over darkness, and compassion over judgment. And I still live with those words till this day, because when we eliminate, like the moment you act from a place of hate, you are already putting that person as someone that's not, you are not going to open to discuss. When you are putting darkness in front of light, there is no way you are going to discuss with that. But when we put really compassion, and instead of judging, oh, Edna, she is from Indonesia, I'm not going to talk to her, she is Muslim, she is this. Or this guy is the producer, he is from Shidia, I'm not going to talk to him, he's French. Or Ali is from Morocco, he's Arab, I'm not going to talk to him. It's about compassion. And that's what we are missing, being compassionate. Talk really from the heart, and people feel the language of the heart. When you're speaking from the heart, people will feel it and feel you are genuine. But sometimes, how many times you try to speak to someone, and from the moment they open their mouth, they say, where are you from?
Yeah.
You know if they are really going to humiliate you, or they are going really
The intention
to
of how you
to
the tone,
know
yeah.
where you are from. I used to drive taxi, and people, the moment they say, where are you from? I know they are just going to make fun or something. I said, I'm from my mother. But where is your mother from? My mother from Morocco. When they realize that, okay. So it is just it's education. It's really like we need like this community.
Yeah.
We need to be part of it, but we need to understand each other. So we can't say like there is Black month or Black day or Arab day or Muslim day, human day, human life. That's matter as all human, and that's really what we want.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's cool too is, everybody has different backgrounds here. Like, Inda is Muslim, I'm Christian, but yet we're still having conversation and getting along. I think that at the end of the day, we're humans. Humanitarian comes first, right? So I think the world is so divided, and it's like, okay, well, let's sit over here, and we're going to sit over here. But I think, unity is good too, and just, I don't know. But I just think it's cool that we're all have different backgrounds. We're all sitting next to each other, because you don't always see that, right? So.
Exactly.
And I think that if we didn't talk, then we'd be missing out on all the cool things that we can actually find out about each other, things that we can learn from each other. Like, I'd be missing out on meeting a cool person like Katie if I'm just like, I don't want to talk to this person because she's this and this and this, because she's different from me.
Labels
So,
and
Yeah.
100%. Sometimes we really get scared of going for the uncertain, but I think someone say the treasure you are afraid to enter, holding the treasure you are seeking. Because sometimes just be brave and open that conversation and use compassion and just be open to have a discussion, because you never know, that could be a lifetime friendship with that person.
Yeah.
But don't let the judgment, don't let hate, don't let darkness
right.
stand in
I
front.
only hang out with this type of person, or
Exactly.
or this religion. It's like, okay, well, what is
This is
your
my clique.
Yeah.
I'm not talking with them.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. This. I really love this conversation. I don't want it to end, because different background, different country, different religion, and different personality, and we are having a conversation. Because.
Would you look at that? It's possible, guys.
And it is possible.
Yeah, it's very possible.
It's possible because it is. We park our ego. We park our ego and we open our ears to listen to each person, and we discuss the idea. We don't discuss the person, where they are
Exactly.
from, what religion they are, what color, what gender. So when we really focus on that, we become more open and willing to learn and educate them also.
And there's probably more that unites us than divides us. I think that's a big thing too. We focus often too much on our individuality or whatever, but obviously it's good to be proud of that, but I also think there's a lot that unites people together.
100%. So unity comes from diversity and from inclusion and from equity. And I think our break is coming, so we will be right back to talk about Let's Dive Together. Hello, this is Ali Tarnishi at Connect with Ali, and here Dives Together, diversity, inclusion, community, and equity, and here with this amazing guest, Inda and Katie, and now we are diving into the fourth question. How can we challenge? This is a big one. How can we challenge stereotype and promote sensitivity and inclusion? Stereotype is a big thing, yeah? A lot of people they come with that stereotype. Oh, that is Muslim. Oh, that is. How can we challenge that and really make it and promote inclusion and sensitivity in?
I love the Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the Nigerian author. She talked about the danger of a single story. So she says it's dangerous.
The danger of the single story?
Of a single story, yeah. So it's dangerous to have only one story about a community, because the thing with stereotypes is it's not that they're not true. Parts of it may be true, but it's incomplete. It doesn't paint the whole picture. So when you're generalizing someone based on stereotypes, it might not be true for that person. And that's where generalizations and discrimination can happen.
I really love that. That's very deep and complete. And I see why it's a danger, the danger of single story, because it's just being seen from one side.
One side, exactly, one angle.
Really love that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. It's so like, it's such a vague topic because there's so many different ways you can go with that. Like when I say, you know, if I say the word Christianity to you, you're going to have a completely different viewpoint of what that means to me, or anything other, like that's just one example. Do you know what I mean? Because everyone has different experiences, so you have to just have patience and learn. Okay, well, what does that mean to this person? Or it's, yeah, I think it would be hard for anyone to talk about their different backgrounds or where they're from because of, you know, even me, like I'll say, oh, I'm a Christian, but then I'm like, oh, that person's gonna think I'm homophobic and I'm a this and I'm that, and so I'm like, because of what they've been taught, but I've been taught something different. So I feel like it's hard for, I can see where stereotypes come into play because, you know, everyone has a different viewpoint of how they see things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how can we challenge that? Like, how can we make the incomplete complete and make the danger single story not dangerous anymore?
I think it's, we were talking earlier about exposure. The more that you know people from different communities, for example, like often on the media I was saying like Americans are portrayed as like all these crazy people that, you know, do this and that. But if you're exposed to real Americans in your own lives, often that's not the case. And maybe think about them when, you know, a media story says this. And for example, there's a lot of Muslim comedians who talk about like, oh, there's always stories about like terrorism, but there's never a story about like Muhammad just like cutting onions, you know, something normal. Like just doing daily life things, right? So I think what we see in the news obviously is something newsworthy. That's why it's on the news. So just kind of taking a step back and thinking like, oh, but this is the thing that's on the news. There are like hundreds of other people that are not on the news that are doing normal things.
I think that is true. Like sometimes we base our own reality based on what's trending or what's in the news, and it's like, okay, well, it's good to have critical thinking too, and take a step back and say, okay, well, is this true or is this a trend right now on TikTok? Like what's actually real? I don't know. But I think one thing I love that Moncton does is we have the Diversity Day. I don't know what it's called here, where we have that big celebration.
The mosaic one? June, I think, or June or July?
I feel like that's really good that we do that, because I've learned a lot just from visiting the booths and trying different foods or talking with people and saying, oh, okay, I didn't know that about this place. I think doing things like that, that's huge, especially for a city like Moncton. I think that's one good way to.
And to your point, Katie, earlier when you were like, if I say I'm a Christian, people will have these ideas of me as a Christian. And like for me, it's like when I say I'm Muslim, sometimes my own community is just like, but you're not this and this and this as a Muslim. And then on the outside world, they're like, oh, but you must be one of the good ones. Oh, but you must be. So it's like people just put their stories on you
and
when
to be honest,
it's not you.
I think, and I said this earlier, I think a lot of the problems with understanding each other is just lack of education. Like I'm not fully educated in that religion. You might not be fully, like it's just, and yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's just lack of knowing, and you don't want. And maybe a part of the reason I don't know so much about it is because you don't want to have those awkward conversations. Okay, well, what does this mean? So, you know, we're taught not to learn about religion. We're taught not to talk about sex, politics, etc., money. So it's like, and then we have these problems in the world, and we wonder why, because we're taught not to talk about that sometimes.
And I think too, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh my God, I'll remember it later.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I would like to go to your point, what you said in the earlier, because single story, or sometimes people tend to narrate our own story. And that's a big thing, because sometimes the media, the first thing when you mention a Muslim, the name Muslim, the first thing they will say, oh, the terrorists. They are like with a big beard, are women like they are, all this generated idea come to your mind. But I will go back when I drive a taxi and a certain guy asked me, are you a Muslim? I said, yes, but you don't have a big beard and you look funny, you are looking good. What about the other one? He said, it's not that what I see in the media. So it's the education.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I have a communication with some of my friends, you really feel like we really are not doing our job, or we are not searching, as you mentioned earlier, self-education or continuous learning. And by doing that, we are kind of breaking that blockage between I understand you and I understand you and you understand me. So we become like, okay, we are open, we are moving all those layers from the past, what our parents teach us, what school teach us, what the society teach us, and we try to see what is there that is the truth, instead of just sticking to the danger of the single story, sticking to
Right.
incomplete story, and see what is the real story.
Yeah. And I remember my point now.
No, here we go. Good take.
So I think to your point, it was it's okay to acknowledge that we don't know about things. It's okay. And I think another point of like, not we're scared to get into these conversations because we think we'll look dumb if we don't know. But like nobody knows everything.
Right.
Right? And it's like nobody, like even someone who's 100 years old doesn't know everything just because they lived here on the earth longer. So I think it's okay to say you don't know and I'm going to learn. And it's okay to acknowledge that, maybe the systems within which I live has been wrong. And maybe that's why towards the future we have to have these conversations. Maybe there are policies that need changing. Like, I think if we don't acknowledge that,
Can't
we
grow.
don't want to, we can't grow, exactly. And it's the same with our personal being. Like, if you don't want to acknowledge your issues, how are you
Yeah.
going to start?
Throughout history, there's
fixing
been problems, racism, or I think that's why we haven't that's why we've moved forward, is because we said, okay, well, this is wrong, or the way we treated people that were part of the LGBT community in the past. They were in the 40s, they weren't even allowed. There's so many wrong things we did in history, but we learned, okay, well, that's wrong. And if you never say, I feel like now we're at another point in history where it's like, oh, well, what's not really wrong? Let's not talk about that. So then we don't grow. So if you don't grow, then you can't level up to the next time in history. Yeah.
Exactly, 100%. And the other thing that I really would like to mention too, like a lot of people say I'm a diverse person, but diverse person, nobody is diverse. Diversity take a group, it has to be diverse. I am a unique person that we have to recognize, like you mentioned at the beginning, like our identity, our uniqueness, our who we are, and bring that, share it with another unique person, and bring our uniqueness to provide this diversity. And this would just bring us to the next question, which is almost like we covered it in a way. How can we contribute to the community effort to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion in a meaningful way? I can repeat that to the audience too, so if you want to leave a comment when we put that on our channel. How can we contribute to the community effort to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion in a meaningful way? I stress on that meaningful way. Anyone can jump to that.
I think there's so many things we can do. I think trying is just one. Again, having an open mind. For
Trying.
instance, one thing I did, and I said this earlier, again, I work alone, and I went to, I saw the future of Moncton, where I live. It's not the same as it was 10 years ago. And I painted murals at Trimble and the Moncton Hospital of a big globe, and there's different people from across the globe on top of it, basically different cultures, and they're all holding hands or whatever, which is illegal now. Anyway, so that was just to have a visual representation. So I feel maybe you're a mechanic and you can do something creative to, I don't know. I don't think there's one easy answer, basically. Whatever your occupation or whatever your gift is in life, I think you have to use that to, to make others feel included, and inclusivity and welcome. So that was one thing I did. But yeah, it's obviously a different answer for everybody, but yeah.
Love it. Thank you. My friend Inda, what Katie was saying about trying, people have to try to really get to contribute to the community effort to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion in a meaningful way. So you were talking about the value, and can you elaborate a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I think I was saying that as a community, as like an organization, as a person, we should make diversity, equity, and inclusion a core value and a core pillar to how we live, essentially, and how we practice, how we work. Because if it's such a core and foundational part of us, then we would want to live in integrity with that, to be true to ourselves as who we are as a community. If we say that we are, then we should act on it.
Bang on that. When we
Yeah.
put it as a core value, we really make it important as one of the pillar of who we are, and we act on it. I really like that.
Yeah,
One
'cause
of the core value.
Words are just words without actions too. Oh yeah, we're diverse, we're this, and it's like,
Yep.
okay, well, what are you doing about it?
I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. I know we have 1 minute 44, and they will just finish with this instead of just talking. Start making some action. So let's dice together: diversity, inclusion, community, and equity. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. When we start conversation, that lead to understanding, and understanding lead to change. Instead of asking why this happening, we should act and say, what can we do to make this change? So to make this change, we will have a meaningful conversation and just try to understand. And try, what I mean by that, just by being open, by listen, by recognize, by accept instead of deny, and by being compassionate instead of judging. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my friend Inda for being here.
Thank you.
For Katie, for just dice with us together to have really this meaningful conversation. And we did really have a meaningful conversation. And thank you very much.
Thank
you
Appreciate
so
it.
much,
I'm happy
Arlene.
we're able to open up this conversation for other people to have at home too, and to take something from it.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
what we'll do. Any last word?
I mean, thank you so much for having us, for giving us the space to share our thoughts about DICE. And I hope this conversation really opens up other discussions at people's homes, offices, and everywhere else.
Excellent.
Great success.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Dig it.
Unbelievable, the first episode on Dice Together. Good job, first.
Yay!